Okay, Devils, how we doing? Happy Friday. Here we are on the 11th of October, and of course, we'll take a look at Bitcoin today. So after last week's, what do we call that, a rant? A plea to reach you guys, I would take a different approach this week, so much less vocal about what I think you should do, and try and keep the F-bombs to a minimum. But so here we are. This is a 3-day on Bitstamp here, which I think is a reasonable way to look at the market right now. Certainly, it helps us simplify where we are. So a couple of things here. So this is, as I kind of emphasized last week, this is about as rudimentary an Elliott count as you could possibly be staring at, but there's a few other things in here, and we're going to get into we're going to go down to some smaller detail. There's an Elliott count that implies that there may well be another push lower here, not dramatically, but we'll get into that. Now, just one thing here, and I think I touched on this last week, but also just in the context of keeping it simple. The Vegas wave is really significant here. You'll note here, we have to go all the way back to, here's the last time, I'm going back to 13 here. So this is, essentially 4 years ago exactly. Here's October, was that October? Well, here's where we break here in October of 14. We stay underneath the Vegas wave. Once we get over here in October of 15, we stay above, and then finally it's here in November of 18 that we break the 233, and we have this very short period where we stay, well, relatively short period, and you can see it kind of, I have something I'll draw it. You can, I don't think I can draw it that way, but you can kind of see the cup and saucer kind of pattern that we have here. So we get this little dip. Now we consolidate. It is interesting, right? So as the three moving averages come together and we consolidate here, that's where the decision time, and then as we spring beyond it, come back down to test here. So you could certainly make a case. So sorry, excuse me. You could certainly make a case that bullish above, bearish below. Right? You want to keep it simple. Now, again, just kind of quick review here. Right? So let's see. I want a measured move here. Let's get. So from my top here, right, we all looked at this before, right? So right into the golden zone, but the same kind of thing. So from this side here, if I pull it up to that pivot, well, and this is what I was kind of ranting about last week. We are certainly in the buy zone down here, where anything in this range would be, again, I'm simplifying here. Certainly there's opportunity here. How about we phrase it that way, right? You're above the Vegas wave. You're between the 50 and the 618. We've got a nice weekly chart, ABC correction. Now, yeah, of course, right? We're going to, again, as I've said, we're going to look. There could be one more little kick down here to get to the golden zone. That would be very typical of the market, right? So go from one golden zone to the next. But I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of noting here that I've just got a couple of key pivots wicked off here that seem to be framing the 250s. So I kind of look at that, and I'm kind of looking at this going, this is interesting, particularly if I get right on these, where we're framing the 250s from above and below. So knowing that markets like symmetry and algos like math, I'm looking at this and I'm kind of thinking, perhaps there's another way to look at this, because this range here, well, here, let me take this off. Take these off, and I'm kind of looking at that range, and it looks, since I'm framing the 250s here, it made me think that perhaps I wanted to look at the wolf tool here. So I grabbed this, which is just range expansion. So, and I'm just connecting dot to dot here. So from this line here to this line here that frame the 250. So I'm just gonna grab that that pivot, and go to this pivot. I'm a little off there. Let's get right on it. Interesting, huh? So we get here a perfect 100% expansion. We get this pivot. Then a 200% expansion. We get this pivot. Interesting, right? So that's the kind of range expansion that we know algorithms like. Right? So then I'm thinking, well, shit, right? If it's good on the way down, let's check it on the way up. So same thing. My thinking being, okay, well, let's check this side here. We gotta get right on it to duplicate it. lo and behold, if I'm right on that, I think I am. There we go. So you got to get right on. They're really within ticks. So I've got this pivot here. So do you see what I end up with here? So I've got this zone here where I'm just separating the two, that range here. Now there's two ways to look at this. So one thought could be, well, above it, resistance, right, or supply comes into the market. Below it, perhaps demand. Well, certainly from here as we've moved higher. So that's one way to think of it. Is if we're above, we're running into supply. If we're below, we're perhaps running into some demand. They're kind of simplifying. The other thought is that we can say if we're below here, it's an opportunity to be a buyer, and if we're above it, it's it's an opportunity to be a seller. So this looks like, I guess what I'm trying to get to is here, this looks like the canyon we got to get across, right? For the bullish perspective. So if you wanted to try and simplify, one thought would be just no trading in this range, because we just have no idea how we're going to resolve out of here. Now we can, right? My view where I think we're going. I think we're going to new all-time highs. But if you wanted to be ultra conservative here, I mean, certainly one thought is to wait for something to get us out of this range. So we get started on something along these lines, right? So if this is going to bump its head here and then start to head down, if we've got more retracement to go from, as would relate to the internal retracement from that low, well, perhaps there's your opportunity here. If you're comfortable with the sell side. So if we can't get through this and get some acceleration to get up and get through the canyon here, I'm kind of, again, just trying to simplify it here. If we can't get through that, if we're just going to hover down here, well, it's certainly giving you time to accumulate. That's another way to think of it. So you might say down here, accumulation, up here. And again, are you trading it or are you accumulating? But down here, we're certainly in the accumulation zone. And we can see all of this history here. Now, if we were to break below the 233 again, that would be problematic, I think, for bulls. Let's see if I can get that, just that. So if I pull it down here, well, we're getting, so things have changed. Now, if we start going that deep here, well, you'd still be in the area of potentially accumulation, right? If you maintain a bullish long-term belief in Bitcoin. You've got these zones. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is just the thinking of trying to quarter off these zones, all right? Here, this seems to be the canyon we got to get across. So certainly for bulls, we need some, and well, note here, I've got the 50 right in the middle of it. So what I would like to see, if we're going to bump our heads up here again, which wouldn't surprise me at all, a retest here could be potentially the launching point that we're looking for. If we're going to get too far beyond it, right? If we were to get something consistent like that, a retrace here, there's your, you got to take that one. Same thinking, right? If we were to come down here and come back for a retest, those of you that, bears, right, that would kind of set you up there as well. So just kind of a different way to think of it. I would keep, I would keep this up somewhere. So if you had quarters here, I'd have different time frames. I'd have different methodologies with which you're trying to identify support and resistance. So here, working off of the Wolf range, certainly valid, something to consider. Right? So really, we're getting this range between, let's call it 11,135, and down here is 80. We'll call it 8,500. Kind of no man's land at the moment. All right, so that just kind of a different way to look at it. Again, so I will certainly keep this up in one of my quadrants of just kind of looking for potential support and resistance, just in a different way of approaching it. So that said, let's go over here. That's where we left off a couple of weeks ago. This is a more detailed count. So I'm down to an 8-hour here, from a 3-day to an 8-hour. Probably have to go down a little bit lower than that. So here I've got a fib channel on it, and all I've done is I've just taken a measured move and just turned it into a channel. So I've got my 3850 golden zone 786. Here's the -23, -618, and I've got the 127 here. If we're going to get a deeper break, just keep it on the channel. but it's the white line here that's the white lines are the framing that channel. Now I've got this trend line here just connecting those lows, because if we are going to come back up, if we're going to get any sort of a test of that, that's going to be significant, and I think you could just extend this on out. That's going to be part of that process of trying to, if we're going to get up and bump our heads here, something like this is going to it may take a few times, but we're going to need to get through that, and then there's always the potential retest from above, but that's kind of what we're after here. So this, again, you wouldn't necessarily need to keep it on your chart at all times, but you could just hide it or just redraw it here, but don't forget about it, because that will likely be some pretty significant resistance as you can see how many times it was touched. 1, 2, 3, 4, here's the break, coming back, likely to be some resistance there. So I'll take it off here just to clear up the chart. And you can see here how we've come, so we're hitting golden zone 50, golden zone 50. Now do we have a little more here? There's a reasonable case to be made here that this count is not complete. So that said, let's go to a 3-hour here and just take a look at it here. So some interesting movement here, I think. If we go back a couple of weeks, the implication was that this was an impulsive move down here into this third, and that we had the scenario pretty much set here for a retrace into a 4. If it was going to play Elliott ball, that we were looking for 3, we get a nice impulse in the C wave here of the 4. So just here, let's take this off, or just hide it here. So where's my fib channel? No. Shit, I must have 2 of them. There we go. Okay, so clearing up the count here. So from the broader pattern being a W, you see, it's one of the contenders, right? We're not going to know until we resolve. But this is a relatively common count amongst Elliotticians here, that we've got a WX and we're seeking the Y still. So from that X, we've got an A, a B, and now we're in the process of finishing that C. Little wonky here, where we had to go with an expanded flat into the A, B, C to get the 3 into the 2, but it seems fairly technical. So from this pivot, I get the wrong one on here. I've got the wolf on, so let me get back here. So from this pivot, if this is 2 through the 3, and we can get a count that completes it down here. 1, 2, 3, skinny on the 5, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to give us the 5th of the 3rd, and it looks like we just did pretty much what you were, kind of Elliott playbook. Well, we were looking for an ABC. Now note here, we go right to the 233, right to the Vegas wave. Now that would imply that we've got another push down here, so we could just use the algo target. It's not unreasonable. And then kind of putting that all back together. This is my low here. So you guys know what this is going to tee up. From the low to the high. All right, so here's our target, sitting smack dab in the middle of the golden zone. So from this, we get to, did we get beyond the 38? Oh, that was very close. Yep, so we got a little bit beyond the 38, ran into the 233. That would suggest that there's the potential here for one more move down here to get us to that target, into this golden zone. So if this is just starting here, if the C is in, then we're looking for the 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that would have us completing the entire countdown here to give us the 5th of the C of the Y, and then it's game on, right? That would be the safer play. Now this has been interesting as well. All right, big drop yesterday. Mixed feelings as to what happened there, or I should say. Differences of opinion. It could be the ETF getting denied. It could be just a whale just dumping, right? We're never going to know what really causes that. But the technical pattern here is pretty hard to miss, right? So we get an AB and we get an impulse in the C, and it's technical, and then we get right into the sell zone, right where you're looking for it, between the 50 and the 30, or pardon me, the 38 and the 50 here. And this is also technical, so just basic stuff here. Just length of the A projected from the B low, we get the 1272. Okay, so up we go, tag it, and then immediately rejected. So again, the implication is that we're just starting into the 1, 2, right? So there should be, per the count, if it's going to cooperate, there should be one more leg down if it's going to complete and play Elliott ball with us. And this This was technical. So with those three pivots, you know, this is ideal for a set of median lines. So here's our low here. So we get our 80% is realized from the pivot. Here we get a perfect tag here, pushes off. And here we come, it looks like, so in the 3-4 and we go up for the 5, it can't get back to the median line, and you got the 233 there, and then for whatever reason, again, you've got volume comes in, dumps it. But it doesn't free fall, which is a good sign. So essentially, you can just look at the structure. All we did was really come back to this zone. Well, if we want to fatten it a little bit, get both of these pivots, we're back to support here. So do we hold? Maybe. It's hard to know. But of course, you're going to want to look for, is there any algo support there? So from the swing high to the swing low, well, lo and behold, what we got, there's the 50. So no surprise that we run into some support at the 50. Now, can that go? Well, sure. Yeah, nothing says it can't. We could be on our way back here, and then maybe we're revisiting this. You know, this could be relabeled, but right now, until we break that pivot, I think you got to be leaning more towards more downside here, towards this golden zone. And unless we get a big push over the weekend that would take us back to get, so this algo that's a buyer here at the 50 to get their target at the median line, it still would be, I wouldn't be a buyer into that. How about I say it that way? So you'd have to be careful about that, potentially just this all just getting relabeled, and then we'd still be looking for one more push down until we start to break some of these bigger 65s in the golden zones here. But this is just the first one, right? So you guys know the drill here. We're gonna have to get through all of these, right? Here's the next big one up here. We got to get through that. So for that to happen, then we're back here thinking, oh, maybe not. Maybe this is a double bottom. We're into a low here, and now something impulsive is underway. But at the moment, it doesn't appear that that's what's happening here. Pull that off here. So just pulling this back out. So let's go back to an 8-hour. Likely to be a short one today. So with this all here, this is leftover from last week. Come here. Okay. Can I get the whole damn thing here? Come here. All right. So it wouldn't be surprising, I don't think, right? Knowing how the markets move. Right, for us to go from this golden zone to this golden zone. So this is really the bigger range, if you want to really, from golden zone to golden zone here. So from our all-time high to our $3,200 low to a golden zone. Now, through all of this to come back to the golden zone wouldn't surprise me at all. This is actually where I think that is the, as I said last week, I don't know, if you're not buying that, I don't know what you're waiting for. I'm kind of speechless, right? If you don't buy that, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing in Bitcoin or in crypto if you're not going to buy that. So that remains to be tabbed, and we haven't gotten there yet. So you know, that's the danger. If you're waiting for that, you risk getting left behind, which is kind of what I was ranting on about last week. Here we're in the zone, right? We don't know, right? Shit. I mean, just because there's an Elliott count doesn't mean that must be realized. So you're taking a risk by not buying here in this zone. But if you're comfortable with that, like, okay, if I miss this turn, there will be something that will, if it pushes out of here, there will be the inevitable. You know, this will come, and I'll wait for that, right? So that's not unreasonable. I just think that this is the time to be accumulating. So again, as I said last week, it's not you know, the kids' tuition money, but certainly a reasonable spot to start accumulating here as we sit between the 50 and the 618, and then kind of putting that all back in the context of what we were looking at over here. If this is the zone, the canyon that we got to get through, anything down here looks like that's an opportunity. All right, and I would just, until we get here, maybe that's your opportunity to start looking for an ad. So the ideal scenario would be a little retrace. Now you're back to the 50 of that, and then we start to go. All right, so short and sweet. All right, there's not much else to do here. If you're comfortable waiting, then go ahead and wait, because that sets up. It's pretty, right? It's pretty technically, and then we put this back on. You've got that beautiful opportunity to have just the textbook confluence. If this comes down here, we get into the golden zone of that fib channel. No, that would just be spectacular technically, but I wouldn't necessarily be just waiting for that, right? So that's possible, not necessarily inevitable. So just some food for thought there. Okay, guys, that's pretty straightforward today. All right, there you go. I'll be back, members. I've got, we've got the poll running. Okay, I'll be back with you in a little bit.